Thanks, Allison. A man was stopped by a game warden out in the woods. He was carrying 2 big pails of fish. The game warden asked that typical question, do you have a license for all those fish that you've caught? Knowing that the best lake in the area was nearby. The man replied, no, sir, but these are my pet fish. Pet fish? The warden asked. Yes, sir, every night I take these here fish down to the lake and I let them swim around for a while. And then I whistle and they jump right back in the bucket. And I take them home again. I don't believe it. Fish can't do that. And I looked at the game warden for a moment and he said, here, I'll show you. It really works. He walked back down to the shore of the lake and he dumped the fish into the lake. And waited. After a few moments, the game warden said, well? The man said, well, what? He said, when are you going to call them back? Call who back? The fish! What fish? Anybody here ever play dumb? Have you ever acted as if you knew nothing about a situation or a problem? Have you ever pretended that you had nothing to do with something that was being asked about? And sometimes things happen around us or in our lives that they have an impact on us, they affect us, maybe deeply or profoundly. Sometimes there's things that affect us or happen to us that cause us to evaluate who we are, and what we're doing, where we're from, how we live. Isn't it funny how often that we quickly slip back in to the old way that things used to be? How often that even the most powerful events, the most powerful messages, they can challenge us, they can cause us to think, I need to work on that, to answer correctly, and after a while we find ourselves right back into the old road of playing dumb with our lives. And that's what the disciples do in our story, after all, isn't it? If you read all of John chapter 21, you'll know that Jesus has risen from the dead. And He has appeared to His disciples on a few different occasions. He's appeared to Mary Magdalene first, and then He's appeared to 10 of the 11 remaining disciples, and then He appeared last to doubting Thomas, and with all of them in the room, He said, okay, Thomas, check it out. Put your fingers, your hands right here on the wounds. You know, put your hand in my side where the spear went in. It's really me. I mean, this is a big deal. This is life-altering, earth-shattering stuff that's happened. The disciples had trusted Him and followed Him for 3 years, and then He's killed on a cross. He's buried. And now here they are, confronted with Him in front of them again. I mean, this is the sort of thing they should be going, wow, that's amazing. What do we do next? Right? So they thought to themselves, I know. Let's go fishing. That's what they did. They looked around at what they'd been confronted with and what the situation was, and Peter looks at the rest of the guys. Peter, the leader, the stubborn one, like Nancy said. Peter's the guy that got it right. Remember when Jesus said, who do you say that I am? Peter's the one that said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. I mean, if anybody should have known what to do next, it's Peter, isn't it? Somebody looks to Peter, and he looks at them kind of like you're looking at me. And he goes, I'm going fishing. And all of them said, good idea, let's do that too. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? It's like they're pretending everything that's happened hasn't happened. They're just playing dumb. Doesn't it? With all they'd seen, with all they'd learned, with all they themselves had done, confronted with the resurrection of Jesus, Peter looks at them and says, I'm just going to go fishing. It's not what we expect, is it? So they go fishing, the story goes. And they're out all night, because that's when they went fishing. They put their nets down all night and they've caught nothing. Zero. Nada. Some fishermen would call that a good day's work. As long as they're not making their living that way. But these guys are trying to make their living. They're just trying to go back to the way things used to be. Aren't they? And they see somebody on the shore, and that's not uncommon. Quite often, if people wanted to buy fish, they'd come down the shore, wait for the fisherman to get close to the shore, and say, hey, what'd you catch? I'd like some. Right? So they don't at first recognize Jesus. And he hollers from the shore, put your nets down on the other side of the boat. Which sounds like a pretty dumb instruction, doesn't it? I mean, oh wow, we're going to move the nets over 4 feet. That'll make the difference. I'll catch a lot over here. Anyways, the fisherman knows that's true. Right? Guy on the other side of the boat always catches more than you do. So they put the net in the water, and they catch so much fish they can't pull the net out of the water. They don't know what to do. But they realize something amazing has happened. And John, the writer of the Gospel, says to Peter, it's the Lord. How he got that from 153 fish, I don't know. and Peter thinks to himself, once again, I'm going to do something really brilliant. It makes a lot of sense. I'm 100 yards offshore. There's deep water all around. I got my nets full. No, there's enough guys in the boat. We cannot lift it out. Even with all this there, we can't pull it out of the water. I got a great idea. He puts on his clothes. Stay with me now. And he jumps in and swims to shore. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be putting my clothes on to go for a swim. I mean, this is a weird story any way you look at it. They're playing dumb the whole way through, aren't they? Peter swims to shore, though, because he doesn't want to take the chance of missing out on being as close to Jesus as possible. A lot of fish? Good. Jesus, better. His priorities are entirely different. And the disciples, they managed to row to shore, pulling this full net behind them, and then something interesting happens. Just before our passage that I read, it says, Peter pulls the net out of the water. Don't miss the miracle. Peter suddenly is strong enough to do something that all of them together couldn't do on the boat. You ever noticed that before? And Jesus has a little fire burning. He's got some food ready for them. And he says to the guys, come and eat. Come and eat. That would have been an awkward breakfast. When the one you said you'd follow catches you out fishing. Think about it. But I want you to notice this as we begin this passage together. Jesus, before he says a word to Peter, before he confronts Peter on anything, he first blesses Peter with a meal. And only after he's blessed Peter does he deal with the issue that Peter's dealing with. He first meets Peter's real needs for warmth and food and a chance to dry his clothes that he put back on to go for a swim. And then he asks him a question. And Peter's answer opens the door for an invitation from Jesus that is still open for us. The question is a simple one. Peter, do you love me? But I want you to notice that there's a little difference between each time he asks and each time what he says in response to Peter's answer. He first says, Simon, son of John, verse 15, do you love me more than these? Notice that. Nancy pointed out the difference between the love in there and how Peter answers. And so I won't go into that. But I just want you to notice this more word. Because Jesus is testing Peter. Okay, Peter, he's not saying, Peter, do you love me more than fishing? He's saying, do you love me more than these other guys here? Do you love me more than everything you've ever done, how you've lived your life? Do you love me more than your normal way of doing things? And although the answer isn't exactly what he hoped for, Peter does answer in the affirmative, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And so Jesus gives them the first task in response to that first question. He says, feed my lambs. And it's interesting because the word for lamb and sheep in this passage 3 times is 3 different words. The first instruction is take care of the little ones. Take care of the ones that can't take care of themselves. Just like we take care of our children. Take care of those. Feed them. Herd them. Make sure they're safe. Then he asks again a simpler question. In verse 16, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Notice he doesn't ask this time more. Just, do you love me? And again, Peter responds, yes, Lord. you know that I love you. And he says to him, tend my sheep. Not feed this time, but tend my sheep. And this one is the idea of caring for people and teaching them and leading, which is something that we often miss when we just say feed, feed, feed. That Peter's being given a specific task, that those who choose to answer yes to the question, do you love me, are being called to a specific task. First, take care of the little ones, yes, but then also take care of the older ones. Teach them, lead them. And then verse 17, the one that hurts Peter. Simon, son of John, do you love me? I mean, if I go to my wife and says, do you love me? And she says, yes. I say, no, really, do you love me? She says, yes. I say, no, seriously, do you love me? She's going to start getting irritated, isn't she?
Yeah.
I've done it. Yes, she does. See, she's nodding. Peter is getting frustrated. And so he says this classic line, Lord, you know everything about me. You know that I love you. And Jesus says to him, feed my sheep. And this one again is the idea of herding. For the older ones, keep them together. Make sure they stay on track. That they get where they're supposed to go. One commentary put it this way. Jesus is not asking about an ascending or descending scale of love here. But he's asking whether Peter loves him so deeply and personally that he'll be faithful to obey him in the mission which he's being given. It's not a question of how many green leaves are visible in Peter's life, but how much fruit he will bear because he stays in Christ's love. Sometimes we look at a plant and say, oh, that's healthy, look how green it is. But if the fruit tree and there's no fruit, there's a problem. And Jesus is testing Peter to say, are you going to bear fruit, Peter, or are you just going to be green? You may look good, Peter, but are you actually producing what I need you to produce? Are you actually taking care of those who need taken care of? Are you taking care of the little ones? That's important because the question is the same question God asks us. Do you love me? It's kind of funny at the door. Somebody dared Francis to hug me. That's the first hug Francis and I had. It was okay. It was good. But when we talk about love, especially us guys tend to get a little bit, I'm allowed to love my wife, but guys, we don't say I love you to one another, do we? Not usually. That's my friend, that might be my buddy, it might be my fishing partner, but it's not, or my hiking buddy, right, Steve? But we don't go, I love that guy. Yeah, no, we don't do that. And yet that's exactly what Jesus is calling for. A declaration of allegiance. One that we will stand up and say, yes, I love you and I don't care who knows it. I love you and I will follow you into the fire. If you say, let's take that hill, I'm going to be right there beside you. That's the kind of love he's asking Peter if he has. The kind of question he asks us. Will we spend the time with him to learn to love him? Will we spend our time in prayer? In studying God's Word so we can know who Jesus is and the kind of things He does? Will we spend time with one another? That's one of the most neglected aspects of our Christian faith today. There's a lot of people that don't know the Bible very well. There's even more that don't know one another very well. I don't know about you, but if I was part of an army and fighting in a battle, I'd want to know who the guys on my right and left and are they going to help protect me and have my back? Wouldn't you? I mean, imagine a soldier who said, I want to be in the army. I want to be the best soldier you ever saw. And when they said, okay, time for basic training, he says, nah, I don't need that. I'll be good. I'll be fine. And imagine they let him get away with it. And they show up for the first long march and say, okay, here's your 50-pound pack, and here's your rifle, and here's all your gear. Get it on and follow us. We've got to hike 30 miles today. Just imagine how well that guy would do. They never went through basic training. They never spent time with the unit. They never made it a priority to prepare for battle. Isn't the scripture that tells us to put on the whole armor of God? To prepare ourselves for a battle to come? We learn to love Jesus by spending time with Him and His family and by recognizing who He is and how He works. When he asks the question, do you love me? What's your answer this morning? Because he's given us something to go with that question, an instruction to feed the little ones, to care for and to teach the older ones, and to guide them all. All of us have that responsibility. It's not just a pastor's job. He's not looking at one pastor and saying, this is your job, and the rest of you do this. He's looking at all his followers at the time. His inner circle, the people that were closest to him, saying, this is what I want you to do. And it's interesting because he goes from talking about love to something that most of us guys can relate to, death. He looks at Peter and he says, truly I say to you, when you were young you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted, but when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go. There's a warning here. In a story I heard about a local priest and a pastor who were standing one on each side of the road. One's holding up a sign that says, the end is near. The other one on the other side of the road is holding up a sign that says, turn around now before it's too late. The car comes down the road and this guy rolls down his windows, comes by and says, leave us alone, you religious nuts. From around the corner, they hear a big splash. And the pastor says to the priest, do you think we should just put up a sign that says bridge out instead? There's a warning here. And while it applies to Peter very specifically, it applies to us as well. That if Jesus says, do you love me? And you answer yes, then after that your life's no longer your own. He says to Peter, when you were young, you made your own decisions, but from now on, you're going to do what I want you to do, even if it costs you your life. It's a warning for us that while we have done, and have always done what we want to do, if we love Him, we'll obey Him. I was thinking about Debbie. Next week, we'll be watching the Super Bowl. And she's going to be cheering for which team, dear?
Patriots.
The Patriots. And who are they playing, dear?
I don't care.
Yeah. Now think about this in relation to Jesus Christ. Not only are we supposed to cheer for the home team, but it doesn't matter who the other team is. Does it? Imagine if I said to Debbie, you've got to change your allegiances. You've got to cheer for the other team. Right? She's sitting there shaking her head, not a chance. How many of us allow ourselves to cheer for both teams? For the way of Jesus Christ and for the way of this world? How many of us have really failed to commit to the side of truth, the side of love, the side of God? Try to imagine playing dumb that morning if you were one of Jesus' disciples. You've been up all night, you caught nothing, you're hungry, you're cold, and you're tired. And just as the sun is coming up, it's right at dawn, that they make the catch of a lifetime and realize that Jesus is right in front of you. Imagine you're one of those. And I dare you to play dumb at that moment. Imagine the conversation around the campfires. Peter and Jesus and the others ate what Jesus had made for them. And once again, Jesus has shown His power and His care and compassion for them. He's feeding them. Such a simple thing. And there Peter is right in his midst. He's got nothing to say. We know that he's already spoken to Jesus, that he's already dealt with the fact he denied Jesus 3 times, remember? He denied Jesus 3 times, and 3 times Jesus said, Peter, do you love me? There's a process of restoration happening here. And the problem is Peter no longer knows his place in the group. He no longer knows what his task is, what he's supposed to do. And so Jesus restores him. Asks the question, do you love me? And only one answer can be given, the one answer that changes everything for Peter for the rest of his life. Yes, Lord. You know that I love you. Yes is a powerful word, isn't it? A year ago, we started a conversation. Back in September, we all voted, and we said yes to working together, to being together this morning, didn't we? It's changed a lot of things, hasn't it? There's two churches that dared to take a risk to answer Jesus' question, do you love me, with an answer that said, yes, we love you. More than we love the status quo. Yes, we love you. More than what we've always done. When you say yes, you need to know that Jesus' invitation is still the same. If you love me, look where he ends up. After saying this to Peter, he said to him, follow me. It's really that simple. If you love me, then follow me. Follow me with your wallet and bring your whole gift into the storehouse. Let's be honest, our money goes to what we care about, doesn't it? How many people have said, I love Jesus, and then said, I'm not going to church this week. I'm not going to give to that. Ever happened? Nobody's raising their hand. Isn't that funny? If we love Jesus, then we'll follow him not just with our wallet, but with our time and our energy. We'll follow him with our obedience to his word. We'll follow him with our conversations and our choice of companions. We'll follow him with our entertainment. What we choose to do with our time. It's supposed to change anything and everything. And Jesus is still asking the question, do you love me more than these? If you do, then follow me. Would you pray with me?